I can remember what, I don't know whether it was days, weeks, what, just lying on the sofa in my basement that had no windows down there, and I just couldn't get myself up. I couldn't get involved in life. I was just, my kids were in their teens at that point, and I have very little memory of that time period. I think because I was so involved in my own little world, and days and weeks went by and I didn't come out of the basement.
I would hear my kids laughing, and their laughter would hurt, and I just felt like I wasn't a good enough mother. And I would hear them talk, and their voices would hurt. I didn't feel like I was a good enough wife for my husband, and I couldn't go to bed at night. And it started off where I would stay, he would go to bed, and I would stay up till 12, and then I would go to bed, and then the next night I wouldn't go to bed till 1, and then 1:30 and 2, and I couldn't go upstairs and lie down beside him because I just didn't feel like I was a good enough wife.
Suicidal tendencies and just wanting to check out, just being depressed all the time. It's like, fighting through a wet blanket to do things and stuff like that, and then you start to realize that your life's never going to be quite what you wanted it to be, and then you kind of lose hope, for the future, because then you self-stigmatize yourself by saying, oh geez, I'm bipolar, instead of, I'm Don King, who happens to have bipolar.
My road to recovery, I think, really began when I had an assessment at the Clark Institute. And one of the things I remember so clearly is sitting with the doctor there, and that's when I was given my diagnosis of bipolar disorder and post-traumatic stress, and him saying, you are going to be sick for the rest of your life, you're going to be on medication the rest of your life, you'll probably never work again, it's in your best interest to just accept this and get on with your life. And I remember thinking, what life? You've just told me I don't have one. And there was something in me at that point that just refused to completely give up.
Well, I think having the peer group down on Wellington Street that they used to have, where you went for lunch and played cards, that sort of thing, I think that was the beginning of any kind of recovery, because I felt like I was amongst my peer group. I understood people, and I increased my capacity for understanding and compassion by recognizing that these people had illnesses, but they were very caring and compassionate people, and they had a lot of forgiveness in their heart and things like that. And that really, really helped me. But I developed friendships there.
It was either a Saturday or a Sunday morning. I came home and I listened, and I sat down at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, and I listened to CBC radio, and there was a special with Ron Ellis, and he was talking about his experiences with depression. And I sat there and I was just riveted by his story. And for him, it was like a message of hope. And I listened, and I had come home, and I had come home filled with despair. And I sat there on that cold February morning, and I thought, I'm going to do it.
The recovery steps were, it's not a linear process. It's not where you're going straight forward. You take a few steps forward and 5 steps back and 2 forward. A lot of the steps in my recovery came when I forced myself to get out of the basement. I would force myself to get out and go for a walk. And I went from just managing to go not even quite all the way around the block before I went home and hid again. And I just forced myself to do that day after day until I got to where I was walking probably about 5 miles a day. And whether it was raining, snowing, it didn't matter. I knew I had to get out of the house and walk.
So volunteering was a step number one. Step number two was driving, and I can remember driving my son as far as the golf course, which is very close to here. And that was huge. And then going back to work, and I went back to work on long-term disability, and I went back 1 day a week for 3 weeks, and then 2 days a week for, another like 4 weeks. And then I had to work myself up. And I think it took me about a year to work myself up to 5 days a week.
And work has helped me cope because as great as that peer environment has been for me, these are other individuals within society that I hadn't had contact with in a long time. So just having the coworkers there as well was bringing me forward. Dealing with like the general society on a working basis was great. Having a boss again with expectations of me and the challenge every day to get things done quickly because I work for a newspaper and it has to get out on time with all of its flyers, and it gave me some responsibility, and I could be proud that I did a good day's work.
When I got the position I'm in now as a peer specialist, I think that work has helped my recovery because it's validated what I've gone through. It's given me a voice for my experiences, and it's given me a way to make sense of what I went through in helping and encouraging other people. And it continues to encourage me. I can see I was here, and now I'm here, and I can see other people on the same journey and see where they are along the way, and am able to say to them, there's hope for you. I can hold out hope for people now, like other people did for me. And it's been an incredibly healing process.
I mean, I can remember talking to an occupational therapist and saying, do you know anybody who is bipolar that works? And she says, well, yes, of course. And I was saying, are you sure? And she says, of course they do. And just hearing that affirmation.
Really didn't think that I had a chance of going back to work. I thought that I would probably be a volunteer, not a paid employee. But you told me that you knew a lot of people who were bipolar that worked, and you convinced me that it would be possible to work again.
So you didn't know anybody else that was working
No,
that had bipolar
no, nobody,
mood disorder?
nobody at all.
Although it's possible that you'd worked with people and just didn't know.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things about having an invisible disability in a way. It's not apparent always to people.
Yeah, it's kind of like a zit, You think
That's a great analogy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not
That's
as
a
big
great
as
analogy.
it's not as big as you think it is.
Yeah.
If she said, well, no, they don't work, they volunteer, well, then maybe I wouldn't have done it. But sometimes just having the power of suggestion, that helped a lot. There was this occupational therapist, there was never a doubt in her mind that I would go back to work. She never doubted it. And because she never doubted it, I never doubted it. So surrounding myself by positive people, helped me on my road to recovery.
I used to punch walls and get into rages and stuff like this, but I didn't hit people. But it just makes you physically ill, you know, to get upset and stuff like that. And then I started taking Epival, and or valproic acid, they also call it, and that really changed my life, quite truthfully, because it didn't let me go so low as much as I had gone before. So it held me a little buoyant, sometimes frustratingly so, but it also stopped the highs, you know, the mood swings, like the 2-second anger thing to the, you know, just, you know, monotone. It wasn't happening anymore. Instead of just always getting into a rage, now I could just be a little pissed off, and you know, that was a huge change for me, because it was one or the other all my life.
I feel like I have an illness, but I don't, you know? Like I'm doing everything to prevent myself from getting sick, and yet I don't feel as though I'm sick.
Like, I don't know how to gauge total recovery, right? Like, what is recovery for me? Is it recovery working 3 days a week, and that's my recovery, and then doing shirkings and different strokes? Or is recovery full-time employment? And my doctor tells me that I'm not able to work full-time employment, and you know, that doesn't mean that I'm not going to attempt it maybe one day. And if I find that the doctor's right, there's no harm in trying to push the envelope. And but then I can simply go back to the 3 days a week and stay productive, and then I'll be fine with that. I'll be a productive, giving member of society, and I'm okay with that. So as far as where my recovery is right now, I think everybody would agree that it's pretty great.
As far as where I am in my recovery right now, it's really hard to say. I have many more good days than bad days. I still have days when I come home and I want to hide. I know my triggers at this point. I know if I have a couple days when I'm not sleeping, that I need to look at my stress level. I need to take some steps to get things back under control again. I know how to deal with stress a lot better than I did before. I have friends now who are an integral part of my life who also know what to look for. And if there's a couple days when I'm not real communicative on the telephone and am not wanting to go out for a coffee with them, then they know it's time to sit down, have a chat, and say, is everything okay?
It's good to be able to talk to somebody that, you know, does do the same kind of thing and does understand that it can be stressful. It can be really stressful.
I think I got a good balance with friendship right now, because I can talk about it if it's been a really stressful day, but we can also have a lot of fun, which sometimes at the end of a day is more important, it seems, than talking about it anyway.
Yeah.
You know, it's just being able to kind of laugh about stuff. And I had a lot of years when I didn't have that, and I think that's been really important in how far I've come. I work in a great organization where there's a lot of supportive people, and I think just knowing myself better, my days now are really pretty good.
I don't drink. I might drink a little bit, like the odd glass of wine. I have a bath every night, like you can count on it, like clockwork. And I read a book, and then I go to bed at 9:30 or 10. And I just kind of pamper myself.
I think that I manage it by focusing on keeping my job and improving in that area if I can, becoming compliant and staying compliant to my medication, and I listen to what I'm told in psychotherapy. It's a good mirror, because sometimes when you're having comprehension issues or decision-making and issues and stuff, it's nice, even if you are right, to have somebody else as a mirror to bounce that back to you.
How I manage my recovery is probably going to sound a little bit funny to some people, but it's amazing what cuddling with the dog on a swing with a hot cup of tea can do to just lower your stress level. For me, sitting in my backyard on my swing is like meditation. I can look at my yard. I have a big old Manitoba maple in my backyard, and I look at that tree and the strength and the tenacity, and it stood through the ice storm. It stood through everything. And if I take myself away and just sit out there with my dogs and my tea, it does more for lowering my stress and centering me than anything.
I would define it as knowledge of health and wellness. One of the most important things is when you know, when you can identify symptoms, and you can think to yourself, okay, I think I'm not doing well, and you sort of can do something about it. Sometimes when you're sick and you don't know it, that's not recovery.
It might be looked at by some as a return to what you were before you became ill, and that is like kind of an acceptable way of looking at things. I'm not so sure that it's totally wrong, but and I think it would be great for a lot of people if they achieve that. But I believe that true recovery is coming out the other side, and not going back to exactly the same as what you were before, but coming out as a better individual with more understanding of other people and more compassion because of what you've gone through. Hi, how are you today?
Not bad.
Good. Name's Don.
Rob.
Rob, I'm from Share Kingston.
Okay.
And what we try and do is help people out where we can by providing these insulated lunch pouches. Carry food around there too, but it's full of all the hygiene products you might enjoy.
Right on, sure. Oh yeah.
So we'll leave that with you.
Thank you.
We hope it helps.
Thank you very much.
You take care, Rob.
You too, thank you.
Okay, speak to you soon.
Yeah.
And because you also hopefully have a much better sense of self, that your life is actually going to be a little bit better, because now the true you has been reconciled with your illness, and you are a different person, and I think that's true recovery.
I almost think recovery is an unfortunate word because it sounds like there's an end point. I am now recovered. I don't think recovery means you'll never deal with the illness again, you'll never need medication again, that life will be wonderful. It will probably always be a part of who you are. It just means recovery means being able to get on with your life and finding a life to get on with. Finding what it is that turns your crank and makes you happy, and finding the courage and the strength to do that.
Yeah, I guess I do have one, and that's forgiveness, and forgiving people who have maybe not handled you in the right way or treated you very badly because of stigma. But in order to move forward, forgiveness is the way. And I'm also talking about forgiveness of yourself. And if you feel that you've done this or that, it's important to forgive yourself. So I think, forgiveness has a lot to do with recovery. If you're recovering from abuse issues or these things, and you've got to forgive others and yourself, and that gets you clear to go ahead with your recovery.
Looking forward to days, looking forward to nights. Sitting and reading a book. And enjoying it. Everything's enjoyable. I don't know. I feel great. I really do. And it's funny. It feels good to sort of say, I feel good, you know, and you almost want to touch wood, you know, because you don't know, you know, if it's going to last, you know, and that's always a bit of a fear.
It's different for every person. I can see people who I can really identify with where they're at, but what worked for me won't necessarily work for them. It's a very individual process. It's something that the person has to decide for themselves. And it's not an end point you strive for. It's not when I'm over here, I'll be recovered and it's all done. It's just like a hike. You know, you go along a level area for a while, then you go uphill, then you go downhill, then it levels off for a while, and sometimes it's hard work, but there's beautiful scenery out there. And I guess that's my philosophy on recovery.